A police officer stopped a black woman and made up fake charges. He didn't know she was a Navy SEAL commander. In court he lied. She proved he was lying with evidence and recordings. The officer got fired for lying. Don't judge people by how they look. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps as Commander Sarah Williams adjusted her simple black suit. She had deliberately chosen civilian clothes today, wanting to blend in like any other citizen appearing in traffic court. Her military bearing was impossible to hide completely, the straight posture, the alert eyes, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. But most people wouldn't recognize these signs for what they really meant. Sarah was one of the first African American women to earn the Navy SEAL Trident, and one of only a handful to reach the rank of commander in the elite special operations community. She had led missions in hostile territories, commanded teams of the military's finest warriors, and earned decorations that most people only read about in books. But today she was just another defendant in traffic courtroom 3B, fighting a ticket she knew was unjust. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah had been driving home from a community outreach event where she'd spoken to local high school students about military careers. Still in her dress blue uniform, she was taking the scenic route through downtown, thinking about the bright young faces she'd just met. That's when she saw the flashing red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. Officer Marcus Brennan was having a bad day. His supervisor had criticized his monthly report numbers, his girlfriend had been giving him grief about working too many hours, and he was tired of what he called routine patrol duties. When he spotted the sleek black sedan with tinted windows cruising through the upscale Riverside district, something about it rubbed him the wrong way. The car was too nice, the driver was going too slow, like they were casing houses, and when he ran the plates they came back registered to someone with an address in the city's most expensive neighborhood. In his mind this spelled trouble. Drug dealer maybe. Or someone with stolen plates. Either way it was worth a stop. Sarah pulled over immediately when she saw the lights, her hands already positioning themselves at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. Her military training had taught her to de-escalate situations, and she knew that traffic stops could be dangerous for everyone involved. She rolled down her window and waited calmly. Officer Brennan approached with his hand resting on his service weapon, his jaw set in a hard line. When he saw the black woman in the driver's seat, his assumptions seemed to solidify. He didn't notice the military uniform at first. His eyes were focused on her face, already building his narrative. License and registration, he barked, his tone sharper than necessary. Good afternoon, officer, Sarah replied evenly, her voice calm and respectful. May I ask why you stopped me? You were speeding, Brennan lied without hesitation. And driving suspiciously. License and registration. Now. Sarah knew she hadn't been speeding. The cruise control had been set at exactly 25 miles per hour in the residential zone, a habit from years of military precision. But she also knew that arguing on the roadside rarely ended well. She reached slowly for her purse, narrating her movements. I'm reaching for my purse on the passenger seat to get my license and registration, she said clearly. That's when Brennan finally noticed the uniform. Navy dress blues with ribbons that would have impressed anyone who knew how to read them. But Brennan saw only what he wanted to see. Someone trying to hide behind military service to get out of a ticket. Oh, so you're military, he sneered. Think that gives you special privileges to break the law? Sarah handed over her documents, including her military ID. The name read Commander Sarah Williams, United States Navy. Brennan glanced at it dismissively. Commander, huh? His tone was mocking. Well, Commander, you were doing 40 in a 25 zone, and you were weaving between lanes like you were intoxicated. Have you been drinking today? Each accusation was a lie, and Sarah knew it. She had consumed nothing but water and coffee at the school event. She hadn't been weaving, her driving was as precise as everything else she did. And she definitely hadn't been speeding. Officer, I respectfully disagree with your assessment, Sarah said, maintaining her composure. I was using cruise control at 25 miles per hour, I haven't consumed any alcohol, and I remained in my lane throughout my drive. Brennan's face reddened. He wasn't used to people challenging his version of events, especially not black women who should have been grateful he wasn't hauling them to jail. Are you calling me a liar? He demanded. I'm simply stating the facts as I experienced them, Sarah replied diplomatically. This only made Brennan angrier. He spent the next 10 minutes making her perform field sobriety tests despite having no evidence of impairment. Sarah complied with each request, passing every test perfectly. Her military conditioning made her steadier than most people on their best day. Finally, frustrated that he couldn't find anything else to charge her with, Brennan wrote her 3 tickets: speeding, 40 and a 25, reckless driving, and failure to maintain lane position. Each citation was fabricated, but he was confident that his word would carry more weight than hers in court. "You can fight these in court if you want," he said with a smug smile as he handed her the tickets. "But I wouldn't recommend it. Judge Martinez doesn't like people who waste the court's time." That evening, Sarah sat in her home office surrounded by her commendations and awards, staring at the 3 bogus tickets. Her walls displayed 20 years of military service, the Navy Cross, Bronze Star with Combat V, Purple Heart, and dozens of other decorations that told the story of a warrior who had served her country with distinction. Her husband, David, a fellow veteran who now worked as a civil rights attorney, found her there an hour later. "You're going to fight this, right?" David said, looking over her shoulder at the tickets. "Of course," Sarah replied. "But not the way he expects." David knew that look. His wife was shifting into tactical mode, the same mindset she used when planning special operations missions. "What are you thinking?" Sarah pulled out a legal pad and began making notes. "Officer Brennan made several critical mistakes. He assumed I was just another person he could intimidate into accepting false charges. He doesn't know who he's dealing with." Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah prepared for court with the same meticulous attention to detail she brought to military operations. She obtained traffic camera footage from the city, which clearly showed her maintaining a steady speed and staying in her lane. She got weather reports proving visibility was perfect that day. She documented the timing of her stop and cross-referenced it with her known location at the school event. Most importantly, she researched Officer Brennan. What she found troubled her deeply. This wasn't his first time filing questionable charges. In the past year alone, he had written citations for speeding and reckless driving to 17 different black motorists, with a conviction rate of only 23%, suggesting that most of his accusations didn't hold up in court, but people were paying fines rather than fighting. Sarah also discovered that Brennan had been the subject of 3 internal affairs investigations for excessive force, though all had been dismissed for lack of evidence. The pattern was clear. Officer Brennan had a problem with racial bias, and he was using his badge to harass black citizens. Traffic Courtroom 3B was packed with people hoping to resolve their citations quickly and get on with their day. Judge Elena Martinez was known for running an efficient courtroom, and she didn't tolerate delays or dramatics. Officer Brennan sat in the front row, confident as always. He had testified in this courtroom dozens of times, and his routine was well practiced. State his observations, present his evidence, usually just his word, and let the judge decide. In his experience, judges almost always sided with police officers over civilians. He barely glanced at the defendant's section, where Sarah sat quietly reviewing her notes. She had arrived early and chosen a seat in the back, still wearing civilian clothes and drawing no special attention to herself. When the case of People v. Williams was called, Sarah approached the defendant's table while Officer Brennan took the witness stand. Judge Martinez looked at her paperwork with mild interest. Just another routine traffic case. "Officer Brennan," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court what you observed on the afternoon in question." Brennan settled into his testimony with practiced ease. "Your Honor, I was conducting routine patrol in the Riverside District when I observed the defendant's vehicle traveling at a high rate of speed through a residential area. I activated my radar and clocked her doing 40 miles per hour in a posted 25 miles per hour zone." Sarah made a note. There had been no radar gun visible during the stop. "Furthermore," Brennan continued, "the defendant was driving erratically, weaving between lanes and showing signs of possible impairment. When I initiated the traffic stop, she became argumentative and claimed to be military, as if that somehow placed her above the law." Judge Martinez nodded, having heard similar testimony hundreds of times. "Any additional observations, officer?" "Yes, Your Honor." The defendant refused to acknowledge responsibility for her dangerous driving and seemed to believe her military status should exempt her from consequences. "In my professional opinion, she showed a clear disregard for public safety." The prosecutor smiled. "No further questions." Judge Martinez looked at Sarah. "Ms. Williams, how do you plead to the charges of speeding, reckless driving, and failure to maintain lane position?" Sarah stood up with military precision. "Not guilty on all charges, Your Honor. And I would like to cross-examine Officer Brennan." Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Most traffic defendants simply paid their fines and left." "Very well. Proceed." Sarah approached the witness stand with the same calm confidence she had displayed during the traffic stop. Officer Brennan looked at her with barely concealed contempt, still not understanding who he was dealing with. Officer Brennan, Sarah began, her voice clear and professional, you testified that you clocked me doing 40 miles per hour using radar. Where was your radar gun positioned during this measurement? Brennan shifted uncomfortably. In my patrol car. I see. And was your patrol car stationary or moving when you took this reading? Moving, Brennan admitted. Were you trained in the use of moving radar, officer? Yes. Sarah walked to the evidence table and retrieved a document. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Defense Exhibit A, Officer Brennan's training records, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request. Officer Brennan, according to these records, when did you complete your moving radar certification? Brennan's face went pale as he looked at the document. The records show you were scheduled for moving radar training but never completed the course, isn't that correct? Judge Martinez leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Officer Brennan? I may have made an error about the radar, Brennan stammered. So you lied under oath about having radar evidence of my speed? Sarah pressed. I didn't lie. I estimated your speed based on my experience. Sarah nodded and retrieved another document. Let's talk about your experience. Defense Exhibit B shows that in the past 12 months, you've issued speeding citations to 43 drivers. Of those, 37 were African American. Do you see a pattern there, officer? The prosecutor objected, but Judge Martinez overruled. She was now fully focused on the proceedings. Furthermore, Sarah continued, of those 37 citations issued to black drivers, only 8 resulted in convictions. That's a success rate of less than 22%. Would you say that indicates a problem with the accuracy of your speed estimations? Sarah smiled slightly, the same expression she wore when an enemy revealed their position during combat operations. Let's discuss your testimony about my driving behavior. You stated I was weaving between lanes. Officer, how many lanes are there on Riverside Drive in the section where you stopped me? 2? No, 3, it varies. Sarah approached the evidence table again. Defense Exhibit C is a city planning document showing that Riverside Drive in that section is a single-lane road in each direction, with a turn lane at one intersection. There are no multiple lanes to weave between. So either you stopped me on a different road than you testified to, or you fabricated this observation. Judge Martinez was now taking detailed notes. Continue, Ms. Williams. You also testified that I became argumentative during the stop and tried to use my military status to avoid consequences. Officer, do you recall exactly what I said when you asked for my license and registration? You started talking about being in the military. Sarah pulled out a small device. Your Honor, this is a digital audio recorder. I began recording our interaction after Officer Brennan approached my vehicle, as is my right under state law. With the court's permission, I'd like to play the relevant section. Judge Martinez nodded and Sarah activated the device. Her own voice came through clearly. Good afternoon, officer. May I ask why you stopped me? Then Brennan's voice, you were speeding. And driving suspiciously. License and registration. Now. Sarah's voice again, calm and respectful. I'm reaching for my purse on the passenger seat to get my license and registration. The recording continued, capturing Brennan's increasingly aggressive tone and Sarah's consistently professional responses. At no point did Sarah mention her military service until Brennan brought it up himself, and she never argued or became confrontational. When the recording ended, the courtroom was silent. Judge Martinez looked at Officer Brennan with undisguised disapproval. Officer Brennan, Sarah continued, you testified that I seemed impaired. What specific signs of impairment did you observe? Your eyes looked bloodshot and you seemed confused. Sarah presented another document. Defense Exhibit D is the report from the field sobriety test you administered. According to your own report, I passed every test perfectly. You noted that my eyes were clear, my speech was normal, and I showed no signs of impairment. This directly contradicts your testimony today. Brennan looked desperately at the prosecutor, who was staring at his notes and clearly wishing he was anywhere else. Sarah wasn't finished. Officer, in your incident report from that day, you wrote that the stop occurred at 3:47 p.m., correct? If that's what the report says. Defense Exhibit E shows my credit card receipt from the high school where I spoke that afternoon. The timestamp shows I made a purchase in the school cafeteria at 3:52 p.m. The school is 12 minutes away from where you claim to have stopped me. How do you explain this discrepancy? By now, Officer Brennan was clearly caught in multiple lies. Judge Martinez set down her pen and looked directly at him. Officer Brennan, this court takes a very serious view of perjury. Are you willing to admit that your testimony today has been inaccurate? Before Brennan could answer, Sarah spoke up. Your Honor, if I may, there's one more thing the court should know. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder containing her military records. My name is Commander Sarah Williams, United States Navy. I am a Navy SEAL with 20 years of active duty service. I have led combat operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. I have commanded teams of special operations personnel and hold a top-secret security clearance. She placed the folder on the judge's bench. These are my service records, including commendations for the Navy Cross, Bronze Star with Combat V device, and Purple Heart. I am currently assigned to the Naval Special Warfare Command as a training officer. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Martinez examined the documents with wide eyes, while Officer Brennan sat in stunned silence. Your Honor, Sarah continued, I tell you this not to claim special treatment, but to provide context. I am a sworn officer who has dedicated my life to defending the Constitution and protecting American citizens. I would never dishonor my oath by driving recklessly or endangering public safety. More importantly, I would never lie in a court of law. She turned to look directly at Officer Brennan. I cannot say the same for everyone in this courtroom today. Judge Martinez had seen enough. Officer Brennan, I am dismissing all charges against Commander Williams. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to Internal Affairs for investigation of possible perjury and civil rights violations. This court will not tolerate false testimony from law enforcement officers. She addressed Sarah directly. Commander Williams, I apologize on behalf of this court for the treatment you received. Your service to our country is appreciated, and you deserve better from our justice system. The story of Officer Brennan's humiliation in traffic court spread quickly through the police department and the local legal community. Within a week, 3 more of his previous cases were overturned when defendants came forward with evidence that his testimony had been fabricated. Internal Affairs launched a comprehensive investigation that revealed Brennan's pattern of targeting minority motorists with false charges. He was suspended pending a full review, and the FBI opened a civil rights investigation into his conduct. For Sarah, the victory in court was satisfying, but it also highlighted a larger problem. How many other people had been victimized by Officer Brennan's lies? How many had simply paid their fines rather than fight fabricated charges because they couldn't afford to miss work for court appearances, or because they didn't have the resources to challenge police testimony? She decided to use her experience to make a difference. Working with her husband and several civil rights organizations, Sarah helped establish a legal fund to assist people who believed they had been falsely charged by police officers. She also began speaking at law enforcement training academies about the importance of integrity and fair treatment of all citizens. Officer Marcus Brennan was terminated from the police force after Internal Affairs substantiated multiple complaints of misconduct. He faced federal civil rights charges and was eventually convicted on 3 counts of violating citizens' constitutional rights under color of law. Judge Martinez implemented new procedures in her courtroom, including mandatory recording of all police testimony and automatic review of cases involving officers with high dismissal rates. Commander Sarah Williams continued her military career, eventually becoming one of the highest-ranking African-American women in the Navy SEAL community. But she never forgot the lesson from that day in traffic court. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not on foreign battlefields, but in local courtrooms where ordinary citizens seek justice. The case became a landmark example in police accountability seminars, and Sarah often told the story to young officers during her community outreach work. The message was always the same: integrity is not negotiable, truth will always come to light, and every citizen deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, regardless of their race, background, or appearance. Officer Brennan had made the mistake of assuming that a black woman in civilian clothes would be an easy target for his lies and abuse of power. He never imagined that she was one of America's most elite warriors, trained in tactics, strategy, and the art of turning an enemy's strengths against them. In the end, Sarah Williams proved that justice doesn't always come from the barrel of a gun or the edge of a blade. Sometimes it comes from careful preparation, unwavering integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when you're standing alone in a courtroom, facing someone who thinks his badge makes him untouchable. The truth had set her free, and in doing so, it had opened the door for justice for countless others who had been victims of the same corrupt officer. It was a victory not just for Sarah Williams, the Navy SEAL commander, but for every citizen who believes that the law should apply equally to everyone, including those sworn to enforce it.